We'd like to welcome everyone to our first ever WHS Debate. If you're joining us online, however you're joining us, we are thrilled that you're here with us. If you're joining us live or you'll be watching this later, thank you for being here. We have two students that put themselves on a ballot of several students in the school. And the school voted in a primary election to see the two students that they would like to see square off. And what you see in front of you is the two. So we've got Joel Hayes, who is a senior from the class of 2021. He's involved in several things in the school, and so we're excited to have Joel. And we also have Amelie Murdoch, who is a junior in the class of 2022. And so what I told them is that we were going to have a debate covering issues of school. And so I'm Mr. Smith. I'll be your moderator. I have written several questions for them. And we're just going to take a walk through those questions. I'm going to give each individual 1 minute to respond to the question, and then a minute with 0 interruptions on the other side. And then we'll let the discussion kind of be a little more freewheeling back and forth. We are not aiming for a presidential debate that you have seen the last couple times. We're aiming for something a little different, maybe a little more informative. And there may be points where our two candidates agree today. I think it's okay for two people to have agreement about an issue. And so if there's agreement today, we'll just kind of roll with that and we will go from there. Okay, so Joel, I will ask you the first question, sir. And there have been various studies kind of all over the place trying to figure out what's good about homework for students, what's not so good about homework for students, and how much homework is right, both from kindergarten all the way up through high school and into college. And so the first question is this: should schools investigate some kind of limit on homework? Because as it stands now, for most public schools, there are no limits on homework. You've got a minute, sir, uninterrupted.
Well, to be quite honest, I think there should be a limit to homework in schools K through college. The amount of workload, especially for high school students and college students, is amazing, and it's crazy how much they have to go through on a daily basis between work, 7 classes, and any other extracurricular activities that they have to deal with. It's just a lot to bear. It's a lot bearing down on their shoulders, and they need a little bit of relief from that, especially in higher difficulty classes like algebra and calculus and all of the higher education courses.
Okay, so you'd be in favor of some kind of limits. Amelie, go ahead.
I, for the most part, agree with what he said. I do agree that there should be limitations. I'm not exactly sure how we would do that. I don't really think that K through 8 necessarily needs limits, mostly because they don't really have a job. They don't go home and do anything except for play with toys, which that's okay. But at the same time, it also teaches them responsibility to get their homework done and know that that's going to be expected when they get older. I agree that students do have jobs. They also want to balance having time to spend with friends and their family. So it definitely is hard when you're older, especially high school and college, to manage that. So I do agree that there should be limits, but I'm not sure that in K through 8 that there should be limits.
I can see where you come from with that, but if they don't have limits in grade school and elementary, how are the students going to respond to that in high school? They're just going to think it's a free pass. I don't have to do as much homework, so I can slack off and be fine. If you keep it consistent throughout their entire education, it will give them a more sturdy foundation for them to base their education on.
I don't exactly remember a point in K through 8 where I was extremely stressed out about homework. I don't really feel like I ever really went home with homework. I mean, that could have changed by now. I'm a junior, but at the same time, the homework in grade school did not compare to homework in high school whatsoever. And they aren't balancing jobs. They don't necessarily get to go out and hang out with friends or really have the needs to. So I don't really see that it's that big of an issue for K through 8 to need a limit when they really don't have that much already.
So is there no, a kindergartner probably is not capable of focusing for as long as a high school sophomore, high school junior. So you don't think if you're in favor of some kind of limits in the high school, you don't think there needs to be any limits on the grade school factoring in. Of course, teachers are going to be aware of their students and their focus level, but you don't. So you think high school only because of the increased demands?
Yeah.
And
Definitely, because I mean, when you're teaching a K through 8, you obviously know what your students are capable of, some more than others. So you're going to kind of focus on that more. But in high school, you kind of just have to balance it out for everybody. So it's just not really necessary in my opinion.
okay. Amelie, let's change gears here and we'll throw the second question to you. There is always an itch for high school students, at Woodlawn High School specifically, to have an open campus lunch, or there is at least an itch for a certain amount of students. Now, if you were to have an open campus lunch in Woodlawn, there are not like 400 choices right near the school, so that may impact the planning, and this may be kind of a long-term thing. But Amelie, get the first crack at this question. Should Woodlawn High School adopt an open campus lunch period?
I do think that we should have some form of an open campus lunch. I remember that we used to have a couple cafes, but they simply couldn't get the profits that they needed to stay open. So I think that in general, us having an open campus could help the Shell, could help a cafe if we had it open, because there would be more business. There'd be a potential to have more business, and it could help our community in general.
Okay, Joel.
I have to agree on this topic that it would help the community's economy. It would help students learn responsibilities for getting out of school, getting their food, and getting back in time for their next class. There really wouldn't be a downside to the proposal, except the factor of the school's liability for the students while they're off campus and getting their food, like they'd be racing back. I believe Mount Vernon tried that at one point in the old campus, and they were having accidents every day because kids were speeding and racing out of school to get to the first spots in line at the nearest restaurants that they wanted to eat. And it's just a very dangerous topic, or very dangerous idea to go on.
So would lunch need to be longer than 30 minutes, or would you keep it at the same?
In Woodlawn, I'd say it would need to be extended by a few minutes, if not more, just to be able to let everybody get to the nearest restaurant, which is basically Mount Vernon, and back in a safe manner. Unless of course, Woodlawn were to open up a cafe, which there are talks of doing. They could run there, run back, and make it back in time in 25 minutes.
So how would you account for even if there were a cafe in Woodlawn, I'm not sure how feasible it is for them to serve, 100 students within a lunch hour. So if you needed to extend the lunch period, how would you account for the fact that you'd be potentially missing some class time? Would we lengthen the school day? How would you go about that?
Given that we have an 8:25 start time now, I think if we push that forward to 8 o'clock or 8:15, giving us extra time in the morning, we start earlier, get the lunch earlier, keep lunch ending at the same time, we have 10 to 25 minutes more time to go about our day.
Amelie, would you like to respond to any of that?
I think that is a good idea. However, I myself can barely get up to get to school at the time that it starts now. I don't know about any other high schoolers that are going to want to go earlier. Also, it's the factor that some people can't really drive. If we did have a cafe, some people couldn't really go there. So it's not that every single student is going to go eat there. I guess you'd have to do a trial run to see how many students would actually want to go and eat out. We also have Shell, which they lost business when, I'm pretty sure we used to have open campus when my sister was in high school. And I'm pretty sure they could have lost business when they stopped doing that.
So do you think that we would have to lengthen lunch? And if you think that Joel's proposing to move the school day earlier, how would you deal with that?
I'm not really sure how we would lengthen lunch. I don't think that we should lengthen it by going to school earlier. I think it is mostly on the students. If you realize that you don't have time, you just need to kind of be prepared, bring an extra thing of food in case you might not have time to get food. That's what they've done at schools that do have open campus. If you don't have time to get food, then you're just going to have to bring something on your own. Unless we went to school longer than 3 p.m., like in a normal year. We go to 2:10 now, so I guess we could go to 2:30, but I'm not really sure how else we could do it.
So you don't have any kind of safety concerns about sending kids zipping to Sonic right now? They may try,
Yeah. I would say we would try and keep a limit on where they go. I don't really necessarily think going all the way to Fazoli's is a good idea. You're definitely not going to have time to get back. It's kind of on the student to be responsible and know where they can get to in time to get back for their classes.
Okay, Joel, do you think we would have to the school would have to do anything to the tardy structure or I mean, right now at Woodlawn, basically you can get a tardy first hour in the morning if you don't get here, but an open campus lunch would introduce all kinds of other possibilities, like activities happening off the campus. Would kids be able to go home? What do you think?
I think that the open campus would be an option for students, not necessarily a requirement that you have to go home or bring your lunch and stay at school. You could still eat your lunch in the cafeteria, as a lot of students still do. You could still bring your lunch from home and eat in the gym or eat wherever you're scheduled for lunch that day. Or you could have the option to go home, eat lunch at home, and come back to school as long as you get there and back in time for your next class. If you're tardy, or if you're not back by 11:35, then it's on you. It's not the school's problem, and you get tardy or whatever punishment the school decides.
It's your responsibility to manage your time in the way that you think so. Okay, Joel, let's move along to our next topic. Our next topic is about semester exams. Semester exam structure may look the same or very different this year, kind of depending on what happens here in the next few months of our schooling. Obviously, in the spring, we did not have semester exams due to the fact that we were not in the school building, and the teachers and administration didn't necessarily think that would be a fair way to assess your abilities all the way through a class when we were here. However, let's all go to a world where there is no pandemic, there's nothing going on, everything is back to normal. I think we can all agree that would probably be a good world to be in. In the future, should Woodlawn High School continue to hold semester exams one way or the other? What do you think?
I think that it would depend on what colleges and other education or other places of education do, because currently colleges require semester exams and final exams in order to pass the class and graduate. So if you take out the semester exams at Woodlawn, you're not going to be preparing students on how to study, how to get prepared, and how to take the semester exam in college, and they're going to need that skill. It comes up in another question we're going to talk about, but it's important to teach students in high school how to prepare for their life ahead and out of high school.
So you would say to leave the semester exam structure as it, would you get rid of exemptions and have everybody take their exams, or you don't want to go that far?
Not that far. I'd say that we could alter it a little bit where semester exams don't make you, like, say, if you're gonna be in class but you had absences and you have to take them, it shouldn't make or break your grade.
Okay.
Like, if you can keep a good grade in the class and not be there and have to take the exam because you were absent 3 days or 4 days or whatever, however many days it was. Like last year, I had A's in all my classes, but I broke my arm and I missed, I think, 4 or 5 days of school, and I had to take exams. And it didn't affect my grade badly because I scored well, but for some students, that can make or break your grade. And it's not really a fair indication of how a student is doing in class.
Okay, Amelie, semester exams. Let's get your opening take on it.
I agree for the most part with what Jill said. My only thing is I think that the amount of days that you have to miss before you are required to take the exam should be longer. We have 5 months in each semester, which is approximately 150 days. To only miss 3 days and then you're required, I think that is, I know we don't want students missing school, but I think that is a very low amount I think that the days should be more before you are required, because it's just, you're going to miss school. It's inevitable to miss school. Even if you want to or not, sometimes it just happens. That's the only time you can get a doctor's appointment or something like that. But I just don't think it's a good limit on students, because then they're stressed about it the entire year, thinking, I only missed 3 days and I still have to take exams. I think there should be a higher limit.
Do you see any difference between a class like, say, college algebra that you could potentially get college credit for, and a class like I teach, like civics, that's required but there's no college credit at the end of the class? Do you see those two semester exams as being different, or do you see each class as you kind of treat each class the same no matter what?
I definitely think that you focus more on your hardest class when you are required to take a semester exam. I know I study most for my hardest classes when I was required to take a semester exam, but I don't really think there's a difference because it does affect your grade in a sense. So I don't really see a big difference, but there also is, depending on how hard it is for you.
Okay. Joel, same question there. Is there a difference? Do you see a difference between a potential college class and just a regular class that you've got to take?
I'd say there is quite a bit of difference because in a college class, if you're taking college algebra for an example, and you have to take this semester exam no matter what in order to get college credit. You have to pass the exam with a 70 or above, and if you don't get college credit, even though you spent however many hours at night crying over your algebra. It's just not a fair representation. But for a civics class or any other class at Woodlawn that's not a college credit class but is required for Woodlawn to let you graduate, I think there's a little bit less stress on the student and a little bit less like, okay, I have to do this, I have to do well, otherwise I won't get my graduation certificate, I won't get my diploma. I got to do this. But it's just it's different, but not in the sense that I can blow this off, just fail it, I don't really care.
So neither of you wants to take the popular position amongst the student body that we should just ditch semester exams and go from there.
However, I would love to take that position. I don't really think it's a smart idea. Just like Joel said, it's going to prepare us for when we're in college, when we do have to actually take it, and it's going to matter the most. It's going to prepare us just like any other life lesson. We need to learn them. So this is going to get us ready. I just think that there needs to be some boundaries that need to be fixed before it's fair enough.
Is there a grade for you to achieve in a class where it doesn't matter how many days you miss of that class and you still are exempt from the exam? Or do you think there's an attendance barrier that needs to be set for all classes no matter what?
I think both factors should matter. I mean, if you have a 95 in your class, I don't really see a reason that you need to take it, even if you've missed 10 days, because you're obviously still doing very well in that class. I'm not really sure how I would answer the other part of that question.
Okay. Amelie, let's stick with you here for our next question in this first segment amongst issues dealing specifically with Woodlawn High School. So I just asked you guys to imagine a world where there is no pandemic. Let's actually stay in that world, but see if there's anything worth of all the things that we have done differently, of Google Meets and Google Classroom and file cabinets with paper assignments and being at home for 3 days a week, as most of the student body is now. Is there anything worth, when we go back to school as normal, are there any of those pieces, remote Fridays, or if you're sick and you need to be at home but you attend class on a Google Meet, the absence doesn't count against you? Is there any piece of all of this pandemic learning that we've been doing that is worth keeping when we're out of this and school goes back to normal?
I think that there are a few factors. I don't think that going back, if everything goes back to normal, I don't think doing 3 days a week at school or being at home 3 days a week is necessarily good. I feel like I've learned less this year than I could have because of that. I do like when teachers send me a complete list of what my week is going to look like, because then I can plan that out for myself with every single one of my classes. I think that benefits me very well. I also think that if you're sick, it is a good option to be able to still log into your classes, depending on how sick you are. You obviously know your limits, if you can still focus enough if you're sick to get on a class. Other than that, I really wouldn't want to keep anything else from this year.
Okay, Joel, same set of questions.
I agree for a lot of her points. I think that the 3 days off of school and 2 days in school is just a terrible idea. Did I say terrible? It could be so much improved upon, but that's not the question at hand. The question is, are there aspects that I would keep? And yes, I would keep the lunch and study hall A and B period. I think that's a great idea. I've been recommending that since my sophomore year, I believe. And I think it's really beneficial for students to have an extra period where they can just take a break from the school day and get more time to work on assignments and study if they need to. I think that'll tie in well if we did go on campus. Also, the option for remote learning, if you're sick out of school for more than 2 days at a time, if you contract mono or some other serious illness, I think it's a good option to have but not required to go in school and then out of school, in school and out of school. I just don't think that's a good system.
Okay. Emily, do you have any rebuttal to any?
I agree with basically everything he said. I agree that keeping A and B lunches, the study hall following lunch, is a really good idea as well. So I don't really disagree with anything he said.
Okay, well, perhaps as we move into our next segment of 4 questions, so the last 4 questions have kind of looked at Woodlawn High School as a local school unit. And I have to tell you, in a debate, it's kind of refreshing when the 2 candidates can realize that they mostly agree and can say that, even if they do things a little bit differently. I think that's nice. Perhaps as we look forward to the next stage of life, and both of you are upperclassmen and have your eye towards what's going to come after high school, these next 4 questions are going to focus on the college experience. And we'll see if you have different takes on what's coming up in your life. And obviously, all of these issues are going to affect you. So I'm very interested to see your answers. Joel, we'll start with you for this question. The senior class just took the SAT a couple of weeks ago. They were originally slated to take it in the spring of their junior year. That's the normal time. But again, with schools not being in session, the SAT was bumped back. And so although you guys took it, there are many colleges who for this year are moving to where they're not taking SAT scores, the standardized tests that everybody in the country takes, and they're moving away from that. There are some schools that are moving away from that more permanently, and that's what I want to get at. So do you think that colleges should be so invested in SAT scores? Do you see that as a good thing because every student in the country takes them and it gives you a measure of where people are at, or would you prefer to see colleges go a different route?
Personally, because I can take tests well. I'm not test anxious, as people have called it. I think SATs are fine the way they are. Like, it's a place of higher education, and if you're not at the level that you need to be at to educate yourself further, then I think it's only fair that colleges would go for a more qualified candidate than say a person who got a 1480 on their SAT versus a person who got a 1130. I think they're both plenty smart. They have their talents, they have their skills, but one person should go to college and one person should go to a smaller college with less requirements and then move into a bigger college.
Okay, Emily, would you like to respond to any of that?
I will have to disagree with that. I don't necessarily think that SATs really reflect on anything all that well. Although you might not have test anxiety, I know I do. Even though in the back of my head, I know I'm going to do okay, I still get anxious when I'm taking the test. Sometimes it affects my ability to even remember what I've even learned. I don't think it reflects well on students sometimes. You can be the smartest person and still have test anxiety and still fail it. I think that we should be looking more at GPAs, how they do throughout freshman and senior year. I think that reflects more on how they do in class rather than on one big test over everything that they've ever learned. I think that just would help them learn more about students and where they're at.
Well, I will agree that GPAs are an important part, but every college I've applied to so far has asked me for a high school transcript that includes my GPA on it, so they can take that into consideration, along with an essay, or most colleges, not every college, but an essay to get into the college and see how you feel and what your writing ability is. It's a test of ability, not necessarily education as a whole. Like, it's asking questions that need to be known to get a better education for yourself. I'm probably just going around in circles. I feel like I am, but
So it's more of the SAT is like a kind of an intellectual test rather than how much about geometry do you know or how. So what you're saying is it's able to differentiate if you're talking about a kid going to Harvard versus a kid going to Rinn Lake. Obviously, no insult to either of those schools. That the SAT helps differentiate those students better than what a GPA does.
Yes, I believe it does, because if you have a 4.0 GPA at Woodlawn, you might not be able to get a 4.0 GPA at, say, a modern day private school. It's just a difference in curriculums and learning habits at different schools. So a standardized test allows you to have a benchmark across the entire nation of what schools are teaching and how well they're teaching it.
I can understand where most people think that that is a test that should be included when a college wants to bring you to their college. However, I still think that the fact that there are a lot of students now, especially that put a lot of stress on themselves about one certain test, I don't think that it should matter if you do bad on one test where you go to college. Because you could have gotten A's throughout your entire high school, known everything, you could be a brilliant student and still do bad on that test. And I don't think that that should be a matter of where you get to go to college or not.
I will say one test should not decide, but I believe could be mistaken. You can take the SAT more than once and improve your score. Like
Sure.
I know my mom, she took the ACT multiple times, and this morning in the ag shop, she took her ACT multiple times. She started at a 16, and she worked her way up to a 21 or 22, I believe. So she improved her score over a course of a year and a half. So if someone really wants to do well and get into college, they can take their SAT again and prove that they have the determination and the drive and initiative to get into a good school and better their education and go where they want to in life.
I can see where you're saying your points on that, but I don't think that I'm still going to have to stick with my feeling that tests shouldn't affect your future that much. Whether you go to Rend Lake or whether you go to Harvard, like you said, no shame in going to either one of those. I don't think that that should be a factor that matters that much, where you have to stress yourself out so badly, even though you've done so great throughout high school.
So how would you respond then to, like Joel pointed out, there are some private schools that are on a different track and have different expectations because they have a different student body. A public school takes every student and a private school is a selective. How is a 4.0, like a very expensive, highly touted private school, how is that the same as a 4.0 from Woodlawn? Woodlawn's a wonderful public school, but there's just a difference between institutions there.
I feel like it reflects well on the student either way. I don't really see why it matters where you go to school. I can understand that you're going to learn different things, but at the same time, having a 4.0 or even a 3.5, whatever you have, still reflects on this type of student you are, no matter what you're learning or where you're going. That's just how I feel personally.
Okay. Emily, let's stick with you. Both of you play sports and perhaps have, the ability to play at the next level or would be interested in playing at the next level. There are many students who graduate from high school with an athletic ability, and that helps pay for their college. There is a movement amongst some activists that would like to see college athletes be paid not just in their scholarship, but for instance, football programs at major university institutions are reaping millions and millions of dollars off of some student athletes who are being compensated with a college scholarship, but the school is profiting off of these athletes that are they're not getting their fair share in the language of some activists. So, Amelie, take either position you want to. Obviously, should college athletes be paid?
However, I would love to be paid to go to college more than a scholarship. I don't really think that should be your main goal when going to college. Obviously, playing a sport in a college would be amazing. Getting paid would be amazing, but at the same time, you're getting that scholarship to go there and to play that sport, but also you're there to learn. I don't see a reason that you need to be paid on top of that when you're getting more than some students can't even get. They can't even really get a scholarship. So I don't see that they need to be paid extra. I would love to be paid extra, but I don't think that it needs to happen.
I take the opposite stance on this. Because they got their college scholarship, most student athletes in college who are there on a full ride scholarship are there to get scouted by major league and professional organizations to get paid in the future. So while they're still technically in the amateur sphere while in college, I believe they should, because if Woodlawn, take Blake McKay for example, if Woodlawn was making $100,000 a year off of Blake's name and number and everything he's done, I think Blake should be allowed to see some of those profits go to his name, because without him, the school wouldn't be bringing in money and they'd be pretty much unheard of in the realm of sports.
I can understand why you're saying that, and I get that. But for me, I think more of the school side of college. I don't really think about the sports side, so I can't really relate to that. I do play sports, but I'm more focused on the school side. But I think that if you're focused on going into a more major part after college, there's a potential. You have potential to be paid billions, millions of dollars to go pro. I don't think that getting paid extra in a college would really benefit you all that much if you're still going to be paid millions of dollars to go pro. Now, I understand that some people don't have that opportunity. They might not be as athletic as others to go to that level, but I still don't think that being paid to play a sport in a college really would do much good when they could go pro and make millions of dollars.
Well, if they have the ability and the athleticism to go pro, then yes, it doesn't matter much. They'll pay off their college and then some. But for the students who get like partial scholarships and they get put on the team, they still have student debts. They still have to pay for their expenses and living, everything that comes with college, and that's not cheap. The average college tuition in America is well over $50,000 for a year, and it's just not feasible for someone who's getting half or less than that paid for to be in school, play sport, have a job to support themselves so they don't have $1 million in student loans at the end of their 4 years or however long they're there. It's just not a fair shake for the people who are in college sports who can't get a job after sports because it takes up so much of their time.
I'm going to have to say I don't really see a difference between someone that plays sports in college and someone that doesn't. Most will still end up in debt. I don't think that just because you play a sport and you're really good at it, that I don't think you should be favored for that. I think that everyone goes through a point in time where they have debt from college, and not one person should be favored because they're extremely good at a sport. I just don't think it's really that fair.
So for the millions of college athletes that are not going to go pro, the fact that there's so much practice time in sports in college, especially obviously in season, but even sometimes out of season, can be a very time-consuming thing. Some of these athletes who are not going to go pro, they just don't have that talent level. They're not going to go pro. They can't get a job. And so like the sport is their job. So should they not be compensated for the work that they're putting in and the profit that the school is making in association with that sport?
I'm still gonna have to say no. It's your choice. I think that everything you do in life is your choice. You have to know what's gonna happen at the end of that after you make your choice. There are repercussions for what you do. If you realize that you might not be good enough to go pro, I know everybody loves playing their sport until they can't play it anymore. But you also have to think about your future, and if you can't simply do it, then maybe you shouldn't. That's kind of how I think of it. You need to always think of what's going to happen in the end, what's best for me. College debt is inevitable, in my opinion, unless you're a billionaire. So I don't really see why it really matters that much.
Well, you make good points. I'll give you that. But I still think that because of the amount of work and effort and time that they put in to be in the college program, and I know they're getting paid to be there by the college because they get scholarship that pays for part or most of their college expenses. There's still that large part of their life that is not paid for, like food, utilities, any social interactions they want to have. It's just not a reasonable expectation for student athletes in college to have to go through that without a source of income because they don't have time for income or their program doesn't allow them to.
So what would you say for students that get, for athletes that get full ride scholarships? Housing is paid for, food is paid for, books are paid for. What would you say for those? Would they still get paid on top of that, even though they won't have anything that they even need to pay for in the end?
They can still get paid for it, yes. Because those full ride scholarships are where the college is making their money from. They're making money on their jersey number, their name, their pictures, everything about them. They're taking all their money from them, and they don't have a say in whether or not they get any of the money or not. It's more of a right to the money that you're making off of your name.
I think it's more of a reward for how well you do, how well you represent yourself, the hard work that you put in. I think that if you get a full scholarship, if you get a partial scholarship, It doesn't matter. It is your choice to go to that school. You know what's going to happen. You know that you might not have the time to get a job, but it's still something that you love to do. And if you love it that much, you're going to do whatever you can to still play.
Joel, I can give you an opportunity to respond to that before we move to the next question if you want. All right. Speaking of college debt, loans, jobs, money with college, we're going to move from the realm of athletics into the much wider realm of just college in general. Now, understand as I get ready to ask this question that there are all kinds of levels of college and post-secondary education. There are many good trade schools that are a wonderful path for a lot of people. There are community colleges, there are universities, there are private institutions. So I'm just going to throw this question out here, and you guys can tackle this in the pieces of it in whatever ways you want to. There is also, obviously, a movement of folks in broader society that would like to see college be free. That it varies based on who's talking about it, but tuition free, completely free, reduced price, and there are obviously benefits and costs to all those things. So with all that background in mind, let me just ask you the broad question, Joel, to begin with. Should college be free? And you take it where you want to.
Short answer, no. As you said in econ last year, there's no such thing as a free lunch. No matter what you do, you can say it's free, you can say it's tuition free, you can say it's completely free, no matter what. How are colleges going to pay for the expenses they incur? It's going to come out of your tax dollars. The more you pay, the more colleges go free, the more you pay in taxes every year to support those colleges that are now allowing students who don't have the money to pay for it to come in and just spend more and more money from the American citizens' tax dollars. If you don't have the money to go to college and pay for it, then you can get a job. If you really want to go, you can have the opportunity to go if you work for it. But if you don't have the money and just get into a bunch of debt later in life, that's your fault. If you want to go to a trade school and make money right out of high school, that's a very good option. And a lot of my friends are going to trade schools, and I just don't think free college is a feasible option for America.
Amelie.
I'm definitely on the opposite side of that. I don't think college in general should be free. I think the college tuition part of college should be free. I understand taxes are inevitable. Nobody likes being taxed, some more than others. But I think that education is extremely important to everyone in the United States. Everyone should have the ability to go to college and to get the education that they want to fulfill their dreams, whatever they may be. Just because you're poor should not mean that you don't get the opportunity to go to college and you're going to be in debt for the rest of your life. I just don't see why it really matters if you're poor or you're not. I don't see that it's your fault, because some people do what they can. Some people work as hard as they can not to be at that lower level, but they just can't get out of it. It's hard. So when you grow up in the poor side of the economy, it is hard to get out of it. No matter what you do, no matter where you work, it is hard. So I think giving everyone the chance to have a free education, to having an equal education, is extremely important in any standard of life.
Okay, I'll give you the idea of giving everyone an equal opportunity, equal shake is a good idea. It's a great idea. I would love to have for everyone to be able to go to college for free, but it's not a feasible option, because no matter what, there's going to be some people that are more talented and more skilled in school or some ability, and there's going to be people that are less talented or less able to do a job or a task. So it's just a comparison. If you have the ability and you have the means to go to college, you can be the poorest person. Ben Carson, Dr. Ben Carson, ran for president. He's now surgeon, like one of the best surgeons in the country. He came from the ghettos in Detroit, I believe. I forget where he's from, but I read a book on him for some reason. He came from one of the poorest families in his neighborhood, and he worked very hard from third grade on to become better, and he got better. He was able to get a scholarship. He was able to go to college. He got a good job because he had the ability to do so. There's some people that don't have the ability to go into college, and that's where they go to trade schools or community colleges if they want to be educated but not major in something. Like, everyone has an opportunity. It's just whether or not you have the ability to make it in that opportunity and take the initiative to get there.
I don't necessarily think that everyone has the ability. That's great for him. He worked from third grade on to get to where he is now, but just because he did that doesn't mean that everyone is capable of that. Doesn't mean that everybody should be given the chance to get there. Just because you're not the smartest person in the world doesn't mean that you are less entitled to go to school. I say, this is going to be probably something I shouldn't say, but I say tax the top 1%. Send people to school that can't go to school because they simply can't pay for it. Everyone's going to be in debt. That's why I'm saying college tuition should be free, not college in general, because that's going to make a lot more people mad. But I still think that everyone should have the chance to go to college, whether they're smart, whether they're not the smartest person in the room, whether they're the richest person in the room, and whether they don't have money at all. I think that it should be equal. It should be fair.
Okay, I'll give you this. Equality is a great idea. It's great, but not everyone is equal. It's going to be very controversial, but not everyone is born equal. All men are created equal, but they don't have the same abilities from birth. Like you said, not everyone has those abilities. So if you don't have the ability to perform well in college, but you still go and cost more people money, I don't think that's fair to people that are paying for college. And if you don't have a job in college, you're not paying for it. Like, you're not paying taxes because you don't have a job. You're not paying taxes. You don't have any reason. Like, you don't have any reason to not go to college other than, yeah, it's paid for, so I might as well. And I don't really care how I do because I'm not the smartest, so I don't have any motivation to do well. It's not fair to the people, to everyone else that is paying more in taxes for the college education that someone just doesn't really want, but they're like, okay, I can have it, might as well.
Once again, I'm going to repeat, I said college tuition. I didn't say college in general. So there are still going to be payments that they're going to have to make. There's still going to be, they're still going to have to get a job to pay the rest of the fees. This just gives more people than what are able to now the option to go to college. The slim amount of hope that they have the possibility to go to college. Growing up as a little girl, I never thought that I was going to get to go to college. And now I have the hopes and the dreams, and I'm going to do whatever I can to go to college because my mom did everything she could. So I understand that some people don't want to go to college. They're not going to work their hardest to go to college. But there are the people that have the hopes and dreams to go to college. They simply can't do it. And I'm the type of person where if I have extra of something, I'm going to help whoever I can. So taxing the top 1% isn't going to do much, except for some people that want to go to college. There can be regulations, like if they aren't holding a certain amount of GPA, a high enough GPA, then they have to pay something. I understand that nothing is free, but I think that everyone should get an equal opportunity to live the same lives, or even whatever life they want to live, that every other person should have.
So let me ask you a follow-up question. What you're proposing is very expensive. It's not that it can't be done. It's done in other places in the world. And I understand what the funding sources you're talking about there are. So maybe in a world where college is going to be free, I have 2 young kids. Maybe it does make sense for me to pay more taxes because I'm going to use that system at some point. What would you say to folks who don't have college age students or who have adult children who are older adults and who do not have relatives that are really going to use that system? What would you say to those folks if their taxes had to be raised to pay for college for somebody else that they don't know across the country? I mean, how's that fair?
I understand that a lot of people aren't going to think it's fair. I understand that. I don't necessarily think that there's anything you can do to make every single person in this country happy. So I don't really know what I would say to them, because no matter what I say, it's not really going to change how they feel. It's still going to be the same no matter what. There's really nothing you can say to make anybody happy about taxes being raised, except for the fact that they could be sending a young adult to college that never thought that they could have the opportunity.
And Joel, just to ask you a follow-up question on the same vein or the same thought pattern, if there are other places in the world who have adopted this system, I don't know how Woodlawn does this, but we seem to have like 30 or 40 exchange students every, like we're just exchange student mecca here at Woodlawn High School. I don't know how we do it, but we are. And it always seems like they come from a country where they're able to go to college. Why wouldn't, like the costs are, it's costly. Why wouldn't the U.S. adopt something like that other countries do to give our folks the best chance that we have?
Well, I think it's because the United States was based on the idea that because all men are created equal, they have the ability to do what they want with their lives. Everybody has that ability, but if they act on that ability, then that's their own. If they don't act or they do act, it's their own choice. And if they don't want to go to college, but it's like I said earlier, if they don't want to go to college, then they don't want to go to college. You shouldn't have to pay for someone else to go to college, even though you don't want to. It's just not a fair deal for people who are older and are making money that they have to pay for someone who's getting into a ton of student debt for a degree in liberal arts or something like that. It's just not a fair shake for everyone around the United States as a whole.
Okay. I have to say that is a very big, complicated topic, and you guys did both from different angles. You did a great job of addressing that question. So that leads us to our final question. And this question, again, is a very, very broad question. And so I'll give you a little bit of background. It seems as though when they rank various countries' students in the world on standardized testing that maybe Amelie is going to get rid of someday, it seems like U.S. students are, we're not at the very top. It seems like you always see like a math or a science ranking where we're in the 30s or we're not up to par with the rest of the world, according to some of these tests. Now, you could probably quibble with their methodology, you could quibble with the test, you could quibble with here and there. But for the purposes of this question, let's just assume that the United States students are lagging behind some other countries in the world. You're both of an age that many of our viewers are the same age. Some of our viewers are very different age than you. There are different pressures on your age. There are different opportunities. There are different attention spans. Everything about this world is changing rapidly, and you guys are at the right age to maybe tackle this. So the very broad question, and we'll start with Amelie, and then we'll move over to Joel, is, Amelie, how would you improve schools in the United States?
I know for me, I would say don't make tests final because, like I said, test anxiety. It also teaches you the life lesson that if you make a mistake, you can learn from it and do it again and do better. So I think that we should be able to have the ability to have a retake test. If you fail it, I think that if you get a 95, you shouldn't really be able to redo it because, I mean, that's plenty enough. I obviously understand that if you want to get a 100. But for the students that simply just don't understand what they're learning, understanding what they got wrong, learning from that and doing better would definitely benefit students more, especially because they would learn the content much better. They'd be able to re-look over everything, understand why they missed it, and do better. I would also say that sending home simple homework pages where you just have to write down answers doesn't really benefit me. Personally, I guess. I know this is bad, but I memorize what I can because it doesn't really help me learn it. I just have to do what I can to get through it. I think I learn the most when I'm given a project, something that I can do hands-on. Maybe I get to Google some information to do a project. I think personally, in the era that we're in now, I learn better when I'm doing a project rather than just being sent home with a simple piece of paper where I could just write the answers out of a book.
Let me ask you a follow-up question before we bounce over here to Joel. So I understand the retaking the tests and I understand the project thing. So you're talking about one way of improving schools, and it sounds like you're speaking about students who are motivated. Like I would call you a motivated student to do better. What, if anything, and I'm just springing this on you right now, what if anything would you do about perhaps there are some unmotivated students out there? Is there something you think we could do in U.S. schools that could get more kids on board of being motivated, being interested?
Like I said, projects make me more, I didn't say this, but I feel this way. Projects make me more motivated to learn whatever material we're learning. I guess you can have an option to retake the test if you feel up to it. it's kind of up to the student themselves to be motivated enough to want to redo it or want to learn the material. It's kind of hard to speak for everybody when you're very different from everybody else.
Joel, let's bump back to the original question then. Again, very broad question, but what do you think could be done to help improve schooling in the United States?
I'll agree. I think she has good ideas. Those are good ideas for improved schools. My idea that I came up for this question was applied education. Like saying instead of teaching a more broad curriculum for students, like in high school and college, instead of a broad education, let the students pick what they have interest in, and that will get them more involved, more like motivated to learn if they are learning what they want to learn instead of what they're required to learn by the state or by the United States. Instead of make high school more like college in that they can choose what classes they want to take instead of okay, you have to take algebra, geometry, calculus, algebra, you have to take all those. No, just take a class that's required and that will benefit you in the future more so than what will allow you to graduate and be considered adequate by the school.
Okay, so let me ask you a follow-up question then. So I am an example of a person, I was 22 years old with a bachelor's degree and accepted into post-university school before I realized I wanted to be a teacher. So like I get what you're saying, that you allow kids more choice and perhaps you are able to like make school mean more to them if they got more choice in it. But like, do you know what you want to do when you're 14? How do you deal with the fact that maybe you need to expose kids to different things so that they can understand maybe what they're into?
Well, that's a good point. But the way I would respond to that is because it's saying that because students have the option in the early stages of their life, they still have the option in the next years to change what they like. And it's most educations, like most fields, go hand in hand. Like teaching and I can't think of a good example for teaching, but we'll come back. Finance. If you want to be an accountant or a banker or anything in the finance realm, all your classes are basically the same. Or agriculture, like every ag class at Ren Lake is basically the same credits except for one or two specialized classes for the specific major. So if you take a specific class for accounting, if you take accounting and you also take other classes that will help you get there, like business management or stuff like that, you have an idea of, from a young age, you have an idea of what you want to do, and you just don't know what it is specifically. Like you have interests, so you pick classes that interest you, so you can get a better education in those classes, and then figure out what you want to do as a career from there.
I guess I kind of have a couple questions. How would you deal with students like Mr. Smith said that bounce from idea to idea about what they want to be, and then all of a sudden they're stuck in these classes and it's senior year and they didn't take any of the right classes in the end? What would you say, or how would you deal with students like that simply didn't know or thought that they knew, and in the end they completely changed their mind?
Well, I'm in that same boat really. I thought I wanted to go into something that I've kind of changed my mind now, but a lot of the things I've learned in high school still carry over to the other field because I've put myself in the options I've had. I put myself in classes like accounting and econ and all the classes that deal with a specific, or a not specific, I should have said that, a broad area of the world that can allow me to go into a different area or a more specified area later in life.
But I feel like that's why we have classes that are required, is because like students like me, you're going to bounce from idea to idea. I want to be a veterinarian, psychologist, a banker. Taking math classes, it's broad. You can change from anything to be a math teacher, whatever. That's why we do required classes, is because you can go from one job idea to the next more easily than if you took specified classes at the age of 14 for one thing that you thought that you wanted to be, and in the end you didn't. I feel like that's why we have it the way we have it now. and I don't really see anything wrong with it.
Personally, I'm an unmotivated student. I have almost no motivation to learn at this school because they have nothing that interests me. I like computers, and we have one computer science class that was coding. We took it last year. Done with it. We don't have any other options for me because I just don't have it. I know what I'm interested in, but for people who don't know what they're interested in, that's where the different classes, like you can read about the classes, you can watch videos online, just find something that interests you and follow that, because your interests don't really change as much as like what you think you want to do. If you're interested in computers, and when you come into high school, you're probably going to still be interested in computers whenever you get out. It's like Barbie dolls. That's more of a I was interested in that in third grade, not anymore. But it's more because it has to do with your life. Like people have ideas of what they want to do, like subconsciously, no matter what. Like I want to do something that will help. I want to do something that will help people. Like that's not going to change. You can change what you specifically want to do, but if you take classes for, I'll just stay on computers. If you take classes that are like analytics and computers, statistics, analytics, computer science, that's a broad field because there's so many different areas of computer science that you can go into. So if you have an idea, it's a great option for students. But if you don't have an idea of what you want to do, then I'd say get an idea of what you want to do.
I can understand what you're saying, but I also think that since I can remember being in high school, I've been told by many teachers that like you want to focus on your high school days. You don't want to be too worried about your future because you want to live now. You want to live in the now. So I think having broad like classes that are required and then also having electives, I understand that maybe Woodlawn doesn't have all the electives that you would like, all the classes that you would like, but for some students, that's just enough that they need. I don't think that taking that away from some people is fair because they don't know what they want yet or what they want to be.
It's still, you still have all the classes that we have right now. It's just you don't have them required to graduate. So if someone is not going to use math in their job, they're going to do something completely adjacent from anything other than basic math skills, like take algebra, and you have pretty much everything you need to know. Geometry for more advanced students if they want to pursue that, but just get the basic foundation for your education so you can do basic functions in society. Like college algebra, not many people are going to need that in their life. Like geometry, not many people are going to really need that. But the basic foundations of education, algebra, English, civics is a good class. I'll give that because I like civics. But just the basic foundations for what you need to do in life to be a helpful member of society, and then specialize from there.
Maybe there's actually kind of a nice way to tie a bow on what I think has been a wonderful debate. You guys have really done a good job. So Amelie, you're advocating for more kind of project-based stuff, and Jolie, sound like you're advocating for more choice as in the material that you're studying. Maybe there's a way to blend these ideas with all this technology, and we've got access to the internet and all these programs, and maybe there's a way to make the teacher more of a guide and less of a source of all the information, and you can merge your ideas and do some project-based stuff in some things that perhaps you're more interested in, and maybe ditch some of the required classes. But I didn't know for sure if we would make it to an hour, but you guys went for an entire hour. I think you both did a wonderful job. There's a lot of agreement, which is kind of refreshing. There was some disagreement, but then I hope the audience heard this. Even within the disagreement, there was a lot of, I can see that point. I understand that point. And I think more broadly that's something that's missing sometimes from our society, and it kind of makes me sad. And so as we're closing down here, I just want to congratulate both of you on a wonderful job. I'm proud that we're able to put this online. I think you guys both represented Woodlawn very well. I think you're great students. I think you guys did a great job on this debate. Joel, don't cry on me, okay?
I'm trying not to.
Okay. This will conclude the first ever WHS debate. Thank you for tuning in. I appreciate that so much. For those of you who are unable to join live, we'll record this. We'll put this out there in the YouTube world, and who knows, maybe these two will get famous. Thanks again for joining us, and thanks again, you two, for a wonderful debate. We appreciate it. Thanks, everyone.